The first thing I noticed when I walked into the auditorium was the smell. It was not the rich smell of roasted coffee or polished wood, not even the faint trace of perfume that often clings to large gatherings. It was the sterile odor of fresh paint and something chemical hidden beneath the air conditioning. A new logo had been hung above the stage overnight, glossy and intimidating. Titan Global Capital. The letters were tall, metallic, and cold. They seemed to glare down at us as if we were already owned, as if we were just entries on a spreadsheet. 1,200 employees sat in folding chairs lined up with military precision. I was one of them, though I did not feel like I belonged to the group that morning. People around me fidgeted with pens, whispered to their neighbors, tapped nervously on laptops that were still branded with the old Aurelia Systems logo. Some of them were my colleagues, engineers I had spent years building systems with. But that morning, they all looked like school children waiting for a principal to announce their fate. I carried nothing but a notebook and my old badge. The badge was out of date now, a relic from a company that technically no longer existed. I wore it anyway, pinned to my jacket like a protest sign. The room grew quiet when the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd, not the hush of reverence but the hush of fear, of uncertainty. Then he walked out. Damian Cross. His name alone had been enough to stir rumors for weeks before the acquisition was finalized. A financier turned executive, known for his ruthless efficiency, his clean exits, and his cold smile. He walked with a measured stride, as if he owned the space before his shoes even touched the floor. His suit looked sculpted rather than sewn, the kind of suit that says time is money and I have both. His smile was the kind that shows teeth but not warmth. He took the stage without hesitation and paused, surveying the sea of employees like a general addressing his troops. "Good morning," he said, voice amplified through hidden speakers that made it smoother, richer, more confident than any human voice had the right to be. "I want to thank you all for being here. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter. Titan Global Capital welcomes you to a unified future." There was a ripple of polite applause, the kind that comes more from obligation than enthusiasm. I did not clap. He spoke for several minutes about transition, about synergy, about growth opportunities. Words that I had heard countless times before, words that usually meant cuts, mergers, and erasure. My fingers tightened around the notebook on my lap. I wrote a single word at the top of the page. Noted. Then the slide changed, and with it, everything. The title was clean, corporate, and terrifying in its simplicity: Consolidation of Intellectual Property. The bullet points that followed spelled out a death sentence for innovation as we knew it. All inventions, patents, models, algorithms, designs, prototypes, and derivative work would henceforth be considered the sole property of Titan Global Capital, effective immediately. The air shifted. Chairs creaked as people sat back or leaned forward. A colleague behind me whispered, "They can't do that." But the words were swallowed by the silence of everyone else. I kept my eyes on Damian. His expression never wavered. He was calm, assured, even pleased, as though he were delivering a gift instead of stripping away every shred of ownership we thought we had. It was not the first time I had heard something like this. Corporate acquisitions are built on the belief that innovation is not born but bought. They believe patents are trophies, not legacies. But sitting there, I felt the familiar calm that always settled over me in moments of danger. Like standing in the eye of a storm. My notebook remained open on my lap. I wrote a second word beneath the first, understood. When Damian finished his announcement, he smiled again. "We are a family," he said. "Families share, families align, families succeed together." I almost laughed at that. Families also betray each other, I thought. Families fight over inheritances and lock doors at night. The applause that followed was thin, uncertain. Damian looked mildly annoyed that the response was not thunderous, but he covered it quickly, nodding, thanking us again, dismissing us to our breakout sessions. The crowd began to disperse, a tide of gray suits and white shirts flowing toward the exits. I stayed seated, waiting for the noise to fade, for the crowd to thin. My colleague Chris spotted me and walked over, balancing a laptop on one arm. "What do you think, Fran?" he asked, voice low. I closed my notebook. "I think the slide design was excellent." He snorted, then leaned closer. "They mean it. Legal's already drafting forms. Central ownership, no exceptions." "Of course they are," I said. "Legal is fast when there's money at the end of the hallway." Chris studied me for a moment, maybe expecting me to panic, to complain, to share in the fear that was passing through the room like static. "You look calm," he said finally. "I'm thinking about lunch," I replied. He laughed, a quick burst of relief, then shook his head and walked off with the crowd. I stood, stretched, and made my way up the side stairs to the catwalk above the auditorium. From there, the room looked smaller, the people like scattered gray stones. I stayed for a moment listening. There is a sound to fear when it moves as a group, a sort of white noise that hums beneath conversations. I memorized it. Then I left. The service corridor smelled of dust and old carpet glue. I walked alone, hand brushing against the cold metal of a rolling case labeled Stage Power. It hummed faintly beneath my fingertips, alive in its own way. By the time I reached my office, the noise of the auditorium had faded into silence. My office looked the same as it always did. Same plant in the corner, same chipped mug on the desk, same view of the river outside the window, but everything felt different. I closed the door, locked it for the first time in months, and walked to the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. From inside, I pulled out a folder. The paper inside was old, yellowed at the edges, but intact. I placed it on the desk and opened it with the care of someone handling something fragile but dangerous. There it was, the clause. A single sentence buried deep in the contract I had signed over a decade ago, a sentence most people would have skimmed and forgotten. Any invention or patentable work created outside of standard working hours, using personal equipment, without use of company facilities or proprietary information, shall remain the sole property of the employee. I read it twice. My pulse did not change. My breathing stayed steady. I closed the folder and slid it back into the drawer. My phone buzzed with a notification. A new calendar invite, IP clarification and alignment. Location, North Tower, 28th floor. Time, 1 hour from now. I tapped accept, then wrote a single note in my notebook. Lunch delayed. The elevator ride to the 28th floor felt longer than usual. I was wedged between a pair of junior analysts in identical blue shirts who whispered nervously about alignment clauses. One of them caught my reflection in the brushed steel door, then looked away quickly as if eye contact might make the situation worse. When the bell chimed and the doors slid open, I stepped out alone. The carpet on this floor was thicker, the air sharper, cooler, more expensive. The conference rooms had names carved in glass: Summit, Apex, Horizon. I was headed to Summit. Of course they would choose Summit, always the illusion of altitude. Inside, the room was ready for theater. Damian Cross sat at the head of the long table. On his right was a lawyer whose suit looked more costly than my first apartment, and on his left was an HR director I vaguely recognized from transition briefings. They smiled as though the outcome was already settled, as though I were only a box to be ticked before lunch. "Francesca," Damian said warmly, almost too warmly. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." I sat, placed my notebook on the table, and waited. The lawyer slid a slim folder toward me. "This is the alignment addendum," he said. His voice was polished, practiced. "It's a clarification, nothing more. All intellectual property developed during employment or related to employment falls under Titan ownership. It's standard. You'll see it's quite straightforward." I opened the folder. My eyes scanned the paragraphs, crisp and efficient, language that was sharp enough to cut. They had tried to weave a net wide enough to catch even thoughts that happened at midnight, far from their offices, built with my own hands. I closed the folder. "It's not standard," I said quietly. The HR director blinked, startled. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Damian leaned forward slightly, his expression still friendly but his eyes narrowing just a fraction. "What do you mean?" I said, "this assumes my employment contract looks like everyone else." "It doesn't." The HR director frowned, shuffling through her papers. "That's impossible. All contracts." "Not all," I interrupted. "Yours, perhaps, from 2012 onward. I was hired in 2011. Different template." "Different terms?" The lawyer gave a tight smile. "Even so, Francesca, the work-for-hire doctrine clearly states that work performed during employment using knowledge gained through employment belongs to the company." I met his gaze evenly. Key words being during employment and using company resources. The Sentinel system was developed outside of working hours, using my personal equipment in my own space, which means it doesn't belong to Titan. For a moment, the room went still. Damian's smile slipped just enough for me to see the irritation beneath it. He recovered quickly, adjusting his cufflink as though nothing had happened. "That's a technicality," he said smoothly. "No," I replied. "That's the law." I took my phone from the table, tapped once, and a message was sent. "They've made their move," it read. Evelyn would know what to do. Damian shifted gears. His voice softened, his tone conciliatory. "Francesca, let's be reasonable. You've been well compensated for your contributions. Stock options, bonuses, recognition. This is just about aligning ownership for the future. You'll still be credited, of course." I let him talk. His words washed over me like warm water. When he paused, I spoke quietly, deliberately. You don't understand. My innovations are mine. I allowed Aurelius to use them under a license, verbal though it was, and witnessed by the entire engineering team. Remember 2019? The meeting where I introduced Sentinel. Everyone laughed when someone said, "Francesca's letting us use her baby." No one questioned the phrasing. The lawyer typed frantically on his tablet. The HR director looked like she had bitten into a lemon. Damien's mask of calm was cracking just slightly at the edges. "What do you want?" he asked finally. I stood, leaving the unsigned document on the table. "Nothing. My lawyer will be in touch. Titan will need proper licensing agreements if you intend to keep using Sentinel." Damien's jaw tightened. "We could sue." I smiled faintly. "Please do. Discovery will be fascinating, especially when the court sees how you attempted to retroactively claim ownership of pre-existing patents." I walked to the door, my steps measured, my hand steady on the handle. Before leaving, I glanced back at him. "You might also want to review your contracts with clients. Many of them contain clauses about valid patent ownership. Something about immediate termination if licensing isn't properly maintained." Their silence followed me out of the room like a shadow. Back in my office, my hands trembled for the first time. Not from fear, but from adrenaline, I dialed Evelyn. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Exactly as expected," I replied. "They tried the standard assignment. I declined." "Good," she said. "Now we set the trap. I'll have cease and desist letters ready. They'll overplay their hand. Men like Cross always do." I looked out the window at the Titan Tower across the street. I've been ready for this for years. That evening, my apartment became a war room. Papers covered the dining table, photographs and receipts scattered across every surface. I played back recordings of midnight coding sessions, my own voice muttering about error logs and neural net training, background noise filled with the hum of my ancient fridge and the occasional meow of my cat. Evelyn arrived with takeout and a box of legal documents. She whistled at the organized chaos. "You weren't kidding," she said. "This is airtight. You've been preparing for this day all along." "Not for them," I answered, handing her a folder. "For anyone." We worked through the night, turning my years of paranoia into a fortress of proof. Every timestamp, every hash stamp, every line of code was cataloged and notarized. By dawn, the ownership of Sentinel had been legally transferred to my company, Milestech Innovations. Evelyn leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. "Now what?" "Now," I said, sipping cold coffee. "We wait. They'll make their move. And when they do, we'll be ready." The next morning, I walked into the building as if nothing had happened. My colleagues chatted about the new ID cards, the updated dress code, the upcoming all-hands. I nodded, smiled where appropriate, but inside I carried the quiet satisfaction of someone who had planted a minefield under the floorboards. At my desk, I opened my personal laptop. The Sentinel code appeared on the screen, glowing lines of logic that had consumed years of my life. Embedded deep within it, hidden behind layers of encryption, was a failsafe. A key only I possessed. I touched the keyboard lightly, almost reverently. When the time came, Titan would discover that ownership was more than a signature. Ownership meant control, and control was something I had never surrendered. That night, as the city lights flickered outside my apartment window, I wrote a single line in my notebook. "I will not let them take what I built." I closed the book, leaned back in my chair, and listened to the silence. It sounded like victory, waiting for its cue. I closed the office door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, breathing in the familiar scent of old paper, coffee grounds, and dust from the plant that refused to die. The adrenaline from the confrontation in Summit still hummed in my veins, a low electric current that made it hard to stand still. I turned the lock with a deliberate click, the kind of sound that felt like I was drawing a line between me and the rest of the building. The folder was waiting for me in the drawer, exactly where I had left it. I slid it out and laid it flat on the desk. My fingers traced the edge of the manila cover. This wasn't just paper. It was armor, carefully forged from foresight and stubbornness. I opened it and let my eyes fall again on the clause that had already saved me once. I whispered it to myself like a mantra. Any invention or patentable work created outside of standard working hours, using personal equipment, without use of company facilities or proprietary information, shall remain the sole property of the employee. I remembered the day it had been signed. The HR manager had laughed, thinking I was young and overly dramatic. I had smiled back, too polite to explain that paranoia is just preparation in disguise. She had called it cute. I had called it insurance. I sat down and pulled my personal laptop from the sleeve hidden behind the row of technical manuals. The familiar scratches on its aluminum surface felt like the lines of an old friend's face. I powered it on and waited for the soft hum to fill the room. The password screen blinked up, and my fingers moved over the keys instinctively. The Sentinel project folder sat there, quiet, innocuous, just another directory in a sea of directories. But when I opened it, I saw the heart of everything. Thousands of lines of code, each stamped with dates and times that proved their birth outside corporate walls. Each commit hash verified, each update logged with a precision that bordered on obsession. I scrolled through a particular log entry. 2:13 a.m. 2 years ago. I had been wearing an oversized sweater, hair tied up messily, the glow of the laptop the only light in my apartment. My cat had jumped on the table and nearly shut the whole system down by stepping on the keyboard. I had laughed then, tired but alive. Sentinel had been more than work. It had been my anchor, my reason to get up when everything else seemed uncertain. I closed my eyes, letting the memory wash over me. The late nights, the cheap coffee, the endless errors and sudden breakthroughs. The quiet triumph of watching a simulation succeed after weeks of failure. This wasn't just code. It was years of my life stitched together in logic and mathematics. And Titan thought they could just take it. I snapped the laptop shut. No, not without a fight. My phone buzzed. Evelyn's name lit up the screen. "Talk to me," she said as soon as I answered. They pushed the addendum. I refused. Damien's mask slipped. "Good," she replied. "That's the first crack. Now we wait for him to overreach. He will, they always do." I smiled faintly. "I'm not worried." "You shouldn't be. With what you've built here, Francesca, they can't touch you, but be careful. They're going to try intimidation before long. I've seen this playbook." "I'm ready," I said simply. After the call ended, I sat in the silence again. My reflection in the dark window stared back at me, tired but steady. I thought about what Evelyn had said. Intimidation. Of course. There would be late-night emails, sudden meetings, veiled threats. They'd remind me of my salary, my stock options, my place in their so-called family. They'd dangle carrots and wave sticks. But I had something they didn't understand, something they had never imagined. I didn't just have the law on my side. I had control. I reached for the laptop again, this time opening a hidden subfolder buried beneath layers of decoy files. The interface blinked awake. A small window popped up, requesting authentication. My fingers typed in the sequence without hesitation. A dashboard appeared, sleek and simple. 17 dots glowed green across a world map. Each dot represented a facility already running Sentinel. Each one was alive because of me. Each one reported back to this hidden panel, verifying its license through a system no one else even knew existed. If I flipped the switch, every one of those dots would go dark. I didn't do it. Not yet. But knowing that I could was enough. The knowledge sat in my chest like a loaded weapon I never wanted to fire but was prepared to. The office felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer. I packed up my bag, slid the folder and laptop inside, and left for the night. The city was buzzing as I stepped outside. Cars honked, people hurried along the sidewalks, neon signs blinked in the drizzle. I walked without hurry, my breath mixing with the cool night air. My apartment wasn't far. A few blocks, a climb up 4 flights of stairs, a door that stuck in the winter and rattled in the summer. Inside, I tossed my bag onto the couch and went straight to the kitchen. I poured water into the kettle and set it to boil. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. I leaned on the counter, watching the steam rise, and thought about the path that had brought me here. I hadn't always been this guarded. Once, years ago, I had been naive enough to believe that companies valued innovation for its own sake, that if you worked hard, built something extraordinary, they would protect it, nurture it, honor the people who made it possible. Aurelius had disabused me of that illusion quickly enough. Every project was just another line item, another number on a balance sheet. That was when I started building Sentinel in secret, not because I didn't believe in Aurelius, but because I didn't trust them. And trust, I had learned, was the most dangerous currency in business. The kettle whistled. I poured hot water over tea leaves and carried the mug to my desk. My apartment was small, just a single room with a partition pretending to be a bedroom, but every inch of it was mine. On the desk lay notebooks filled with scribbles, diagrams, equations. Some pages were coffee-stained, others barely legible. They were proof, too, in their own messy way. Proof that Sentinel had always been mine. I opened one and flipped through until I found the page I was looking for. A sketch of an early design drawn at 3 a.m. on the back of an envelope. My handwriting wobbled, slanted from exhaustion, but the idea was there. The seed of everything. I smiled. Titan thought they could own me? They couldn't even imagine me. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. I froze, listening. The steps paused, then moved on. I exhaled slowly, set the notebook aside, and reached for my phone. Evelyn had been right. Intimidation would come. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. I typed a quick note into my phone. They will try to scare me. Don't let them. Then I set it face down and went back to work. The city outside my window glowed like a restless machine. Headlights traced narrow paths through the rain-slick streets. Somewhere down below, a siren wailed and then faded into the distance. I sat with my tea gone cold, the notebook spread around me like maps of a secret world only I could read. It struck me then how strange it was that so much of my life, years of sleepless nights, of equations scribbled at 2 a.m, of prototype boards soldered together on my kitchen table, could now be threatened by a man in a tailored suit speaking in abstractions about alignment. He thought this was just business. He didn't understand it was personal. I flipped to another notebook, this one filled with test logs. The margins carried little notes to myself. Don't forget to check thermal limit next time. Try alternate algorithm for anomaly detection. Stop drinking coffee at 4 a.m. unless you want your hands to shake. These notes weren't just evidence. They were fingerprints of my humanity etched into the development of Sentinel. No corporate board could erase them. The thought made me smile. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Chris. They locked down the engineering floor after you left. Something going on? You okay? I stared at the message for a moment. Then I typed back, I'm fine, don't worry about me, take care of yourself. 3 dots appeared as he typed a reply, then vanished. Nothing came through. That silence said enough. Even my colleagues were nervous about putting words into writing now. The atmosphere inside Titan had shifted overnight. Fear was seeping into the walls. I pushed the phone aside and powered on my laptop again. The dashboard loaded, the 17 green dots glowing steadily. Each one represented a facility, factories, plants, operations that had entrusted Sentinel with their safety. Each one depended on my code to keep workers alive and machines from tearing themselves apart. I whispered to myself, they're mine. The green dots pulsed faintly, like a constellation in the dark. I hovered the mouse over one of them. A plant in Ohio. I remembered visiting it during a pilot program. I remembered walking the floor with a hard hat, hearing the roar of machines, and feeling a strange pride that my system could tame chaos into order. If Titan thought they could take this from me, they had no idea what they were up against. The next day I went into the office as if nothing had happened. My badge still worked, though I half expected it not to. The receptionist gave me a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. She knew something. They all did. I rode the elevator to my floor. The conversations around me were hushed. People spoke in fragments, contracts, alignment, new policies, then fell silent whenever I stepped close. I pretended not to notice, but I filed it away. Fear makes people sloppy. If they were already whispering, cracks would spread soon enough. At my desk, I opened the company-issued laptop, signed in, submitted the routine reports. I made a point of looking ordinary. But beside me, tucked inside my bag, my real work waited. The laptop that Titan could never touch. Around noon, a company-wide email arrived. Subject line, clarification on intellectual property policy. The message was full of carefully chosen words, transparency, consistency, alignment. The gist was simple, sign the addendum or risk reconsideration of your employment status. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. There it was, the threat Evelyn had predicted. I closed the email without responding. My hands stayed steady. I pulled out my notebook and wrote another line, they just blinked first. That evening, Evelyn came to my apartment again. She spread her papers across the table while I reheated leftover noodles. They're escalating faster than I expected, she said, scanning the printed email. This is intimidation, plain and simple. They'll keep pushing, I said, but they don't know how prepared I am. Evelyn looked up at me. Francesca, do you realize how rare this is? Most engineers don't think ahead like you did. They just sign whatever is put in front of them. But you were ready 12 years ago. I shrugged, though her words warmed me. Paranoia, I said simply. Wisdom, she corrected. And now it's going to pay off. We ate dinner at the table surrounded by stacks of evidence. Receipts, code logs, sketches on napkins. Evelyn leafed through them with the satisfaction of a lawyer holding aces in every suit. At one point she looked up with a glint in her eyes. You realize this isn't just about survival anymore, right? If we play this correctly, Milestech could become bigger than Titan ever imagined. You could license Sentinel directly. You could control the market. I considered that for a long moment. Control had always been the goal, but hearing it spoken aloud like that made it real. Maybe, I said, but right now, I just want them to understand they can't steal from me. Evelyn raised her glass of water. Then let's make sure they learn. Later, after she left, I sat in the dim glow of my desk lamp. My notebooks were stacked neatly again, the dashboard still glowing faintly on the laptop screen. 17 green dots, unwavering. I reached for one of the oldest notebooks, the one with pages nearly falling out. Inside, on a page scrawled in faded ink, I had written years ago, "They'll try to take this someday. Be ready." I ran my finger over the words. The younger version of me had known. She had seen this moment before it arrived. And because she had been stubborn, cautious, maybe even afraid, I was ready now. I closed the book and whispered into the silence, "Thank you." The city outside pulsed with light. My phone buzzed again, another email from Titan, another attempt to wear me down. I ignored it. Instead, I typed a short note into my journal. They think they're strong because they're big. They don't realize I've already built the kill switch. I shut the laptop, turned off the lamp, and let the room go dark. I met Evelyn the next evening in a quiet cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. It wasn't the kind of place executives would ever choose. The lights were dim, the tables scarred with the ghosts of years of conversations, and the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and burnt sugar. Students hunched over laptops in the corner, and the old barista knew how to keep secrets by never asking questions. Evelyn arrived with her hair pulled back and her briefcase heavy with documents. She ordered black coffee, no sugar, and slid into the booth across from me. "You look calm," she said, studying me. "I'm tired," I answered, though I knew calm was part of it too. "Good," she said, opening the briefcase. "Let's put that calm to work." She laid out the first document, a draft cease and desist letter. The words were sharp and deliberate. It named Titan Global Capital directly, accused them of unlawful attempts to seize intellectual property, and warned of legal action if they persisted. "Once they officially announce ownership of Sentinel," Evelyn explained, tapping the paper, "this letter will land on their desks, but not before. We wait for them to overplay their hand. That way, we hit them when they're weakest." I nodded. Waiting wasn't a problem for me. I had been waiting for years. Next, she pulled out a thick binder filled with tabs. "Evidence catalog," she said. "We'll cross-reference everything. Receipts, code commits, notebooks, recordings. When the time comes, we'll bury them in proof." I flipped through the binder. Each section felt like a memory. There was the receipt for the oscilloscope I had bought with my tax return, the faded photograph of my garage cluttered with circuit boards, even napkins covered with equations scrawled in messy ink at 3 in the morning. All the fragments of a life lived in pursuit of an idea. "This is good," I said. "This is airtight," Evelyn corrected. "Francesca, I've defended clients who had half this and still walked away with settlements. With this much, we're not just defending, we're attacking." Her eyes gleamed. She lived for fights like this. I sipped my coffee and let the words settle. Attacking. That wasn't a role I had planned for, but maybe it was the one I needed now. When I got back to my apartment that night, I opened my personal laptop again. The Sentinel dashboard lit the room with its constellation of green dots. Each dot felt like a promise. I clicked into the Ohio plants log. The system had flagged a potential overheating event last week, predicted it within 4 minutes, and prevented an automatic shutdown that would have cost millions. I stared at the log line with quiet pride. Titan saw only dollar signs. I saw the workers who got to go home safe that night because Sentinel had been watching. That was why I couldn't let them take it. I dug deeper into the folders, past the logs, and into the hidden layer few people even knew existed. There it was, the buried code, the skeleton key only I could use, the kill switch. If Titan tried to claim Sentinel publicly, I could darken their entire network in minutes. I didn't touch it, but just knowing it was there steadied me. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. The halls were quiet, the lights half-dimmed. I liked the building before it woke up when it still belonged to the janitors and the machines. I poured myself burnt coffee from the break room pot and sat at my desk with my notebook. I wrote one line, "Patience is strategy." Then I went about my day. Meetings, reports, casual conversations with colleagues who pretended everything was normal. I pretended too, but beneath the surface I watched. I listened. Every rumor about new contracts, every whisper about Titan's plans. By mid-afternoon, I knew they were accelerating. Damien wanted Sentinel in the investor deck for the quarterly briefing. He was already rehearsing lines about innovation and intellectual property alignment. That was their overreach. Evelyn had been right. I sent her a single message, "It's coming." Her reply was instant. "Good. Let them step onto the landmine. That night, she came to my apartment again. She carried Chinese takeout and a new box of legal documents. The table filled with food cartons and folders. We ate while she worked, dipping chopsticks into lo mein while reviewing deposition strategies. "Francesca," she said, "once we go public, they'll come at you with everything. Threats, smear campaigns, maybe even people you thought were friends turning cold. You ready for that?" I swallowed a mouthful of noodles and nodded. "I've been ready since I signed that clause 12 years ago." Evelyn smiled, proud and fierce. "Then let's make history." Later, when she left, I stayed up long after midnight. The notebooks surrounded me, the dashboard glowed green, and the city hummed outside. I opened my journal and wrote a sentence. "They think they own my nights, but my nights are where Sentinel was born." I stared at the words for a long time, then closed the book. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was filled with dreams of wires, circuits, and green lights blinking in rhythm to my heartbeat. Morning arrived quietly. The apartment was bathed in pale light, the kind that makes you notice the dust motes drifting in a sunbeam. I brewed coffee, black and strong, and carried it to the desk where my notebooks and the Sentinel laptop waited. The dashboards glowed green, small constellations reminding me of every plant, every system, every worker depending on what I had built. Evelyn had sent a text overnight. "They are circulating draft notices for Sentinel. They'll send them out today." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. They had taken the bait. Perfect. I powered on the laptop, fingers flying over keys, checking logs and timestamps. Every line of code I wrote in those long nights, every commit verified with a hash, was intact, secure, untouchable, and hidden within it the key to shut it all down if necessary. I didn't touch it yet. Control is power, yes, but timing is everything. At the office, I moved through the halls as if nothing had happened. Colleagues greeted me cautiously, whispered under their breath. I noted the tension in their shoulders, the way their eyes flicked toward Titan's new posters and signs, the subtle marks of fear. I wrote it all down later. Human behavior under pressure. Useful data. By mid-morning, an email arrived from the HR director with the draft alignment addendum attached. The document was the same as yesterday's. Polished, assertive, authoritative. Nothing in it suggested compromise. I didn't reply. I printed a copy for my files. Then I began preparing my own documents. Evidence logs, timestamps, audio recordings, sketches. Every line and mark that could prove ownership of Sentinel was meticulously cataloged. Evelyn had organized it, but I reviewed it line by line, memorizing every detail, every date. By noon, I had mapped out the sequence. If they published their claim publicly, we would respond immediately. Letters would go out to all clients, press releases drafted, legal notices sent. The net was being woven silently, quietly, but thoroughly. The afternoon passed with the hum of office life around me. Meetings, reports, mundane administrative checks. I sat through them, pretending compliance, pretending distraction. My mind was elsewhere, plotting, planning. Every word, every glance from a colleague, every sudden flicker of a monitor became data. At one point, Damien passed by my desk, smiling the way predators smile before a hunt. He said nothing. I nodded politely, returning his gaze with calm defiance. He didn't like it. I could see it in the tightening of his jaw. Later, I met with Chris for a brief walk outside the building. The city felt sharp and cold. The wind cut across our faces. "They're pushing hard," he said. "Good," I replied. "That means they've underestimated me." He shook his head, impressed despite himself. "I don't know how you stay so calm," I shrugged. "Focus, observation, patience, and a plan they cannot see." Back in my apartment, night came slowly. I prepared my workspace. Notebooks, laptops, printed logs, sketches, receipts. Everything needed to be ready. The dashboard glowed green as I checked each node. The plants, the factories, the systems, each a dot of certainty in a world that felt suddenly unstable. I opened the hidden layer again, verifying that the kill switch was accessible only to me. Each verification took seconds, but those seconds were full of reassurance. Power was in control, but control required timing. Evelyn arrived around 11. She brought more takeout, sat across from me, spreading out her legal plans like a general mapping the battlefield. "They'll try every trick they know," she said. "Delays, threats, incentives, warnings, you've seen it before, but you're ready. You've anticipated every move." I nodded. "I'm ready." She leaned back, watching me carefully. "Francesca, this is bigger than you realize. Once we go public with the cease and desist, once we send the letters and statements, Titan will be forced to react. We aren't just defending ourselves. We're taking the initiative. They'll be on our terms." I allowed myself a small smile. "Exactly." Hours passed. We ate quietly, worked in silence, coordinated our legal and technical responses. I checked the Sentinel nodes repeatedly, ensuring everything was operational. Green lights pulsed faintly, reassuring. Every node functioning, every log intact. I ran small tests, safe simulations, confirming that the system responded exactly as designed. By 3 a.m, our plans were complete. Legal notices drafted, client alerts ready, press releases queued. The trap was set. Titan would move, and they would step right into the opening we had prepared. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. For a moment, I let the tension leave my shoulders. The city outside was quiet now, a few taxis humming through the streets, the occasional pedestrian hurrying home. I thought about the years I had poured into Sentinel. The nights spent coding, testing, debugging, rewriting. The sacrifice, the loneliness, the small victories that no one noticed but me, and now it was all worth it. Evelyn stirred beside me, checking her notes one last time. "Tomorrow, they'll learn the truth," she said softly. "Yes," I whispered. "They'll learn it." I opened the notebook, wrote one line: "Control is preparation, and preparation is power." The dashboard glowed steadily. Green lights, alive and obedient. I didn't touch the kill switch. Not yet. But knowing it was there, knowing that I could end this if necessary, was enough. I sat back and watched, waiting, patient. Sleep finally came in the early hours of dawn, but it was light and shallow. Dreams were filled with green lights, blinking in rhythm, with Sentinel's quiet hum echoing like a heartbeat. By the time morning came, the first moves by Titan were already in motion, and I was ready. I arrived at the North Tower a little earlier than usual. The lobby smelled faintly of polished marble and desperation. Titan employees hurried past me, eyes down, badges swinging. I walked steadily, coffee in hand, taking mental notes on the shifts in their expressions, the way their shoulders tightened as I passed. The elevators hummed quietly. I pressed the button for floor 28. The doors closed, enclosing me in a small metal box with mirrors on 3 sides. I caught my reflection. Calm, neutral. A mask perfected over years of navigating hostel rooms. The doors opened. The corridor was pristine, quiet except for the soft echo of shoes on carpet. I reached the summit conference room. Inside, Damian Cross waited, flanked by 2 lawyers and the HR director. Their smiles were polite but strained. I smiled back, serene, letting them believe I was a passive participant. "Francesca," Damian said, voice smooth. "Thank you for coming. We can resolve this quickly, I'm sure." I stepped forward, placed my notebook on the table, and took my seat. My laptop was beside me, silent but ready. The lawyer slid a thick folder toward me. "The addendum, once again, it covers all IP created under your employment." I opened it and let my eyes scan the paragraphs. Same language, same assumptions, same trap. "I've read it," I said, my voice calm. "Again, nothing has changed. And my position hasn't either. Sentinel was created outside your working hours with my own equipment in my own space. It belongs to me." The HR director blinked. The lawyer typed furiously on his tablet. Damian leaned forward, voice low, controlled. "Francesca, consider your position. This could be messy. A public disagreement may have consequences." I looked him in the eye. "I've considered it. I'm prepared for it. And consequences work both ways." He frowned. "You realize that a legal battle could be costly." "Yes," I said, "but worth every cent to maintain ownership of my work." The room grew tense. Silence stretched. Damian's smile faltered slightly, replaced by the faint twitch of irritation at the corner of his mouth. He motioned to the lawyer. "Is there an alternative?" The lawyer hesitated. "We could negotiate licensing." I shook my head. "I am not licensing Sentinel to Titan under duress." "You can pursue legal avenues, but the outcome is not in your favor." Damian's eyes narrowed. "You're confident." "I'm certain," I said. He leaned back, assessing. "Then you leave me little choice." I didn't respond. I sat, letting the silence speak louder than any words. The HR director attempted to interject. "Francesca, perhaps we can?" "No," I said firmly. "We proceed as is. There will be no signatures. There will be no compromises that undermine my ownership." He studied me again, the tension visible in the slight rise of his shoulders. "Very well," he said finally. "We'll take this matter under advisement, but know that Titan will act if necessary." I stood. "Titan will act, and so will I, but know this, the time for intimidation is over." The elevator ride down was slow. I reflected on the meeting. Every detail, every reaction, every flicker of hesitation. They had underestimated the preparation I had invested over the years. Back at my apartment, I powered on the personal laptop. The Sentinel dashboard glowed green, 17 dots pulsing steadily. I reviewed logs from each facility. Every system operational, every node secure. I opened the hidden layer again, the kill switch. I didn't activate it, not yet. Control was not about action. It was about timing. That night, Evelyn arrived with a fresh set of legal drafts and new evidence from the audit logs. We spread the papers across the table. "They're moving fast," she said. "You need to be ready for immediate action. If they publish any statements claiming ownership, the response must be instant." "I know," I said. "Everything is ready. They don't see the extent of the preparation." She smiled. "Francesca, they're going to learn soon. This is going to be bigger than anything you've anticipated. You have the advantage now, but it's delicate." I sipped my coffee. "Delicate is fine. Precision is better. I control the rhythm of this. Every step they take, I know where it leads." We spent hours going over logs, timestamps, receipts, sketches, photographs, and audio recordings. By 2 a.m., our plan was airtight. Letters drafted, legal notices queued, press releases per-written. Every scenario accounted for. I leaned back in my chair. The dashboard glowed in the dim light. The green dots were small islands of control in a sea of potential chaos. My hands hovered over the keyboard, not touching the kill switch. I did not need to. The knowledge that it existed was enough. Morning came. I walked into the office with calm certainty. Colleagues whispered in hallways, glanced at me, and a few kept their distance. Fear had begun to spread, subtle but noticeable. I sat at my desk, pretending routine. Laptops opened, emails answered, reports submitted. But my mind was elsewhere. Every conversation, every glance, every change in posture became data. Titan's overreach was coming. They could not help themselves. By mid-afternoon, an internal memo circulated. Subject: Sentinel Alignment Policy. Language: formal, firm, indirect threats about noncompliance and legal consequences. I read it calmly, then printed it for my files. I wrote a note to Evelyn: "It's time, they've made the first move." Her reply: "Good. Step on the landmine they never saw coming." I spent the rest of the day reviewing the hidden code. Sentinel was secure. Every line accounted for. Every access controlled. The kill switch was accessible, but only to me. One wrong move from Titan and I could darken their entire network, a fact that weighed on me like armor. The evening passed with preparation. The documents were in place, evidence organized, legal notices ready, press releases queued. The first stage of our counterstrike was set. I wrote in my notebook, "Every move they make is anticipated. Every step calculated." I powered down the laptop. The room fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint glow of streetlights through the window. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the storm building within the walls of Titan Global Capital. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the day's tension settle. When sleep came, it was shallow, filled with dreams of green lights and nodes pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat, each one a reminder of control, power, and patience. The next morning, the building felt heavier somehow. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights sounded tense, as if the walls themselves were aware of the approaching confrontation. I passed colleagues in the hallway, their expressions guarded, eyes flicking toward me before darting away. Some whispered. Some pretended to type. Everyone was waiting for something, though they didn't know what. I settled at my desk and opened my company laptop. Emails, memos, and meeting requests awaited me. Nothing unusual, just the daily hum of corporate life. But I was not here for normalcy. I opened my personal laptop under the desk. The Sentinel dashboard lit the screen in familiar green. 17 nodes, each steady and secure, representing facilities that relied on my creation to function safely. I checked the Ohio plant logs. The system had detected a potential anomaly hours ago and corrected it before anyone even noticed. Every line of code responded exactly as intended. Every node verified. The control was mine. At noon, Damien appeared unexpectedly. I was reviewing project notes when he leaned against the edge of my desk. His eyes scanned the files I had left open. He didn't touch them, just observed. "Francesca," he said, voice careful, "I'd like to discuss the addendum further. Perhaps there's a way to reach a compromise." I looked up calmly. "The only compromise I see is for Titan to recognize my ownership. Beyond that, there's nothing to discuss." He smiled tightly. "You drive a hard bargain." "I don't bargain," I said. "I assert what's mine." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well, but know that we will act. You may find our next steps less courteous." I didn't respond. I returned to my notes. Every word he had said, every inflection, every pause was recorded in my memory. Nothing escaped me. That evening, Evelyn arrived with fresh documentation and audit logs. She spread them across the table. "They're accelerating," she said. "Expect a statement claiming ownership any day now." I nodded. Good, that's what we've been waiting for. She raised an eyebrow. You're calm. I've spent years preparing, I said. Now it's a matter of execution, and I control the execution. We reviewed every log, cross-referenced timestamps, verified commit hashes. Everything was accounted for. Legal notices, client alerts, and press releases were ready to deploy at the exact moment the claim went public. By midnight, the preparations were complete. Every system, every node, every piece of evidence was ready. The green dots on the Sentinel dashboard glowed steadily, silently affirming control. I did not need to activate the kill switch. Its mere existence was enough leverage. I wrote a line in my notebook. Every move they make is anticipated. Every step calculated. The next day, the first wave came. An internal memo circulated throughout the company, clarification on IP ownership. Formal language, indirect threats, warnings about compliance. I read it carefully, then printed a copy for my files. I sent a single message to Evelyn. It begins. Her reply was immediate. Step on the landmine. I leaned back, took a deep breath, and opened my personal laptop. Each node on the dashboard represented power, control, and the proof of my preparation. I ran simulations, checked for errors, ensured fail-safes were operational. Sentinel was mine. Secure. Immutable. Evelyn arrived in the early evening. We worked silently, efficiently, coordinating our legal and technical strategies. I ran through potential responses, timed and rehearsed, ensuring that if Titan escalated, we would respond instantaneously. By 2 a.m., everything was ready. Letters drafted, press releases queued, client notifications ready. Titan would react, and when they did, they would step into the web we had spun. Hours passed. I reviewed the kill switch one last time. It was still buried, still inaccessible to anyone else. I didn't touch it. Control was more about the certainty that it existed than the act itself. I sat back in the quiet of my apartment. The city hummed below, oblivious to the storm building inside Titan. I thought about the years invested in Sentinel, the nights alone, the failures, the breakthroughs, the small victories invisible to everyone but me. Everything was in place. All I needed now was their first misstep. I wrote in my notebook, they think they are strong because they are big. They will learn that size does not equal control. The Sentinel nodes blinked green, steady, alive. My hands hovered over the keyboard, poised but unmoving. Patience was as much a weapon as the kill switch itself. Sleep came slowly, shallow, and restless. Dreams were filled with blinking nodes, lines of code, and the hum of machines, all synchronized to my heartbeat. By dawn, Titan had begun its next steps. Emails, statements, memos, they were reacting exactly as anticipated, and I was ready. The morning air felt electric as I walked into the office. The lobby was buzzing with attention that had nothing to do with the weather outside. Employees whispered in corners, emails pinged constantly, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with anxiety. Titan's internal communication channels were alive with murmurs about the addendum, the alleged IP alignment, and of course, Sentinel. I settled at my desk and opened my personal laptop. The Sentinel dashboard glowed green, every node operational. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, but I didn't touch anything yet. Control wasn't about acting prematurely, it was about timing, about letting the other side make their move first. By mid-morning, the first official communication hit the company email system. Subject: Sentinel ownership confirmation. The message was formal, carefully worded, asserting Titan's claimed ownership of all Sentinel intellectual property. I read it calmly, noting the phrasing, the subtle threats, the implied authority. Then I printed it and placed it in a file. I sent a single text to Evelyn, they've published. Her reply was immediate, now we act. By late morning, media outlets had picked up the internal memo. Social media buzzed with speculation. Analysts wrote that Titan was consolidating ownership of key AI systems, while others hinted at a legal showdown between the engineers and the corporate giant. Headlines ranged from neutral to sensational. Engineer claims back her creation from Titan, corporate takeover sparks IP dispute, Sentinel controversy. Who owns the code? I watched the spread carefully. Each new post, each comment, each tweet was data. I logged it, cataloged it. The storm was building, but it moved exactly as I had anticipated. Titan had underestimated how prepared I was. I called Evelyn. They're amplifying it, I said. Good, she replied. That means they'll overextend. Perfect. Timing is everything. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Timing had always been my advantage. Throughout the day, I coordinated with my legal team. Every potential leak, every statement, every inquiry was addressed preemptively. Press releases were ready to deploy instantly. Client communications had been pre-drafted. Any misstep from Titan would be met with an immediate counter, and it would hit hard. By afternoon, I noticed the subtle effects. Emails from anxious colleagues, internal messages about clarifying the situation, whispers of concern from middle management. Fear had begun to ripple through Titan's workforce. People who had once ignored me now glanced in my direction, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. I leaned back in my chair, taking a moment to breathe. The network hummed quietly, the sentinel nodes blinking green. Every node a small victory, every light a reminder of the control I had over the situation. That evening, Evelyn arrived at my apartment. She carried Chinese takeout and another batch of documents. We spread the papers across the dining table, working late into the night. "They're reacting faster than expected," she said. "The media storm is escalating. Titan is scrambling to contain the narrative." "I know," I said calmly, "and that's exactly what we want." "Are you certain?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "This is bigger than anything you've handled before." I sipped my coffee. "Bigger than anything they've handled, too." We spent hours reviewing every press statement, internal memo, and client communication. Every scenario was accounted for, every response timed. By midnight, our countermeasures were fully operational. The letters were queued, legal notices ready, press releases drafted. I opened the hidden layer of Sentinel one more time. The kill switch remained untouched, secure. Its presence alone was enough to guarantee leverage. Sleep came late, light, and interrupted. Dreams were filled with green nodes, blinking in perfect sequence, lines of code stretching into infinity. I woke early, restless, but prepared. The media storm was only beginning. Titan's moves were predictable because they had underestimated me. By dawn, social media and news outlets were alive. The narrative was spreading. Clients were calling. Employees were emailing. Analysts were tweeting. Every move was anticipated, cataloged, and countered. I sat back, letting it wash over me. The storm was real, but it moved on my terms. The world would see the dispute unfold, but only I knew how completely I controlled it. The next morning, the office felt unusually quiet. People moved through the halls in muted tones, whispers barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning. Titan employees were on edge, their usual confidence replaced with nervous glances and careful steps. I watched from my desk, pretending to review project notes, observing every reaction. The emails kept coming. Questions about Sentinel, clarifications on the IP memo, forwarded press coverage, anxious notes from middle management. Each one confirmed that the storm we had anticipated was growing exactly as planned. I opened my personal laptop under the desk. The Sentinel dashboard glowed green, each node steady and secure. I checked each log for anomalies. None. Every system was operational, every safeguard in place. By mid-morning, the first external media inquiries arrived. News outlets wanted statements, analysts requested interviews, and online forums buzzed with speculation. Headlines were already trending. Engineer retains rights to AI system despite corporate takeover. Titan faces public scrutiny over IP dispute. Sentinel saga. Who really owns the code? I calmly reviewed each article, noting tone, accuracy, and potential vulnerabilities. I flagged anything misleading or exaggerated for legal review. I sent Evelyn a short message. "They're reacting. Proceed." Her reply was instant. "Perfect. Time to guide the storm." Throughout the day, I coordinated with legal and communications teams. Every possible narrative was countered with prepared statements. Cease and desist letters were queued, client alerts ready, press releases lined up. Any false claim from Titan would be met with immediate, precise response. Titan began to scramble. Internal memos circulated, employees whispered about the impending legal counter, and analysts speculated publicly on whether Titan had overreached. Fear was spreading, subtle but tangible. Employees who had ignored me before were now cautious, hesitant to speak. I allowed myself a small smile. Control was not only in the code and legal documents, it was in the perception, in the fear, in the uncertainty I had seeded. That evening, Evelyn arrived at my apartment with a fresh batch of documents. We spread them across the dining table, working late into the night. "They're escalating faster than expected," she said, scanning memos and press clippings. "Public narrative is beginning to shift against them." "I know," I said calmly, "exactly as intended." Evelyn looked at me carefully. "Are you certain? This is bigger than anything you've handled." I sipped my coffee. "Bigger than anything they've anticipated. They misjudged me from the start." We went through every detail, press releases, legal notices, client communications. Every scenario was considered, every response timed and rehearsed. By midnight, the first stage of our counterstrike was ready. The Sentinel dashboard glowed in the dim light, each green dot a silent testament to control. The kill switch remained untouched, but its presence alone was a guarantee. Sleep was brief, fragmented. Dreams were filled with blinking green nodes, lines of code extending into infinity, and the hum of machines responding to commands I alone could issue. I woke early, restless, but focused. By dawn, the external storm was in full swing. News outlets were publishing, social media platforms were alight with commentary, clients were calling with questions, and Titan was reacting publicly. Every move they made was anticipated. Every statement, every action, every attempt at intimidation was already mapped, accounted for, and prepared for. I reviewed each message, each article, each client inquiry with calm precision. The legal team executed responses immediately, press releases went out to clarify the situation, and client communications reassured partners that Sentinel's licensing and control remained intact. The office felt tense, almost theatrical, as the waves of communication crashed against Titan's walls. I observed quietly, notebook at hand, documenting reactions, recording missteps, watching the narrative unfold exactly as anticipated. By mid-morning, Titan executives were visibly strained. Internal emails leaked subtle panic. Analysts speculated on the company's potential legal exposure. Employees whispered nervously. The narrative we had anticipated was taking hold, and Titan had no idea how thoroughly we were prepared. I leaned back in my chair, taking a slow sip of coffee. The Sentinel nodes pulsed green, every system operational, every failure prevented, every safeguard intact. The control I had cultivated over years was real, tangible, and unassailable. Evelyn called in the afternoon. "They're flailing. The public narrative is shifting. You've turned the tables." "Yes," I said quietly. "They never expected it, and they still don't understand how much preparation went into this." We spent the evening monitoring the situation, coordinating legal responses, and preparing for any escalation. Titan would act, but only within the framework we had established. Every reaction from them was already anticipated, every counter already planned. By late night, the media storm had reached a peak. Headlines were everywhere. Analysts discussed potential lawsuits, legal experts weighed in, and social media amplified every detail. Titan was scrambling, responding inconsistently, and the employees' fear was growing. I reviewed the dashboard one last time. The nodes blinked steadily, silently affirming control. I did not activate the kill switch. I did not need to. Its mere existence was leverage enough. I wrote a line in my notebook. "The storm is theirs, but the direction is mine." The city outside was quiet now. The streets shimmered with rain. My apartment was calm. My plans were in motion. And tomorrow, when Titan overreached again, they would step right into the trap we had prepared. The morning air was crisp as I walked into the office. Titan's headquarters felt tense, almost electric. The media storm we had orchestrated had reached its peak. Employees whispered behind closed doors, glancing at me as though they expected me to give them answers I didn't intend to. I walked past them with the calm of someone who had anticipated every step, every glance, every subtle tremor of fear. I reached my desk and powered on my personal laptop. The Sentinel dashboard glowed steadily, 17 green dots pulsing softly. Every node operational, every system secure. The kill switch remained untouched, buried deep in code only I could access. I didn't need to use it, yet. By mid-morning, internal communications indicated that Titan was scrambling. Legal teams circulated memos, attempting to mitigate the fallout from the public dispute. Analysts published articles speculating on potential lawsuits. The company's employees were unsure who to trust, some whispering about alliances, some about severed contracts, all signaling the pressure that was building inside the walls. I sipped my coffee, noting each reaction in my notebook. Every expression, every tone, every subtle misstep was data. I had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Each observation was another piece of leverage. Evelyn arrived that afternoon with additional documents, evidence, and client communications. We spread them across my dining table, reviewing every line meticulously. "They're escalating faster than anticipated," she said, scanning the pages. "If Titan makes a legal move now, they'll overplay. Perfect. That's when we strike." "I know," I said. "The timing is everything. They'll move and then we respond." By early evening, the first formal statement from Titan went public. It claimed ownership of Sentinel outlined licensing terms and threatened legal action against Milestech Innovations. The company had miscalculated. They didn't understand how prepared we were. I smiled faintly, opening my laptop. Every client notification, press release, and legal response had been drafted, queued, and timed. Every response anticipated. The narrative was about to shift completely. That night, Evelyn and I coordinated with our legal team, monitoring Titan's communications and the media landscape. Emails from executives, memos, internal directives, all were cataloged and cross-referenced. I checked the Sentinel nodes again. Each green dot pulsed steadily. The infrastructure was intact, secure. I reviewed the kill switch one more time. It was there, accessible only to me, ready for deployment if necessary, but I didn't activate it. Control was about knowledge, not action. Knowing it existed was enough leverage. We prepared our responses for any eventuality. A press release correcting Titan's claim, letters to clients reaffirming licensing agreements, immediate legal notices if Titan attempted enforcement. By 2 a.m., the framework for the final move was complete. Every scenario accounted for, every line of code verified, every legal argument rehearsed. I couldn't sleep, though I tried. My dreams were filled with the pulsing green lights of Sentinel, lines of code stretching infinitely, nodes responding perfectly to commands only I could issue. I woke early, restless but prepared. The first move by Titan was inevitable. By dawn, emails from anxious employees, leaked internal memos, and client inquiries flooded in. Every movement was anticipated, every reaction planned for. I documented each one. Evelyn monitored legal angles, providing updates on potential exposures. The situation was escalating exactly as we had foreseen. I reviewed the dashboard one more time. 17 green dots, steady, alive, every facility operational, every line of code secure, every system under my control. Titan was pushing their narrative. The press amplified it. Analysts speculated publicly. Employees were fearful, but we were ready. I wrote in my notebook, control is not action. Control is the ability to act at the right moment. By late morning, the first missteps from Titan became apparent. Internal memos circulated inconsistently, contradicting prior statements. Executives issued conflicting emails. Social media discussions grew chaotic as clients and analysts debated the ownership of Sentinel. Panic was spreading within Titan's walls, subtle but undeniable. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. They had underestimated the preparation behind Milestech Innovations. Every node, every line of code, every piece of legal evidence had been carefully aligned. Their overreach would be their undoing. That afternoon, I reviewed the hidden layer of Sentinel. The kill switch remained untouched, ready if needed. Every simulation ran flawlessly. I imagined what would happen if Titan forced a confrontation. All systems could be shut down instantly. The power, though not yet deployed, rested in my hands. I called Evelyn. It's time to finalize our counterstrike. Titan is already reacting, making errors. We'll hit the narrative first, then the enforcement. She nodded. Agreed. Letters, client notifications, press releases, everything must go at once. They won't know what hit them. By evening, the first wave of our counterstrike began. Emails went to clients, press releases went live, legal notices were distributed. The network of green nodes pulsed, silent but steady, symbolizing both proof and leverage. Every message delivered precisely, timing calibrated. Hours passed. Titan scrambled, their narrative crumbling under public scrutiny and the weight of documented evidence. Employees panicked quietly. Analysts revised reports. Clients demanded clarification. Every movement confirmed our advantage. I observed quietly, notebook in hand, documenting the unfolding chaos. The storm was now in full swing, but it was operating on our terms. By late night, the kill switch remained untouched. The green dots on the dashboard were steady, unwavering. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee, watching the storm from the safety of preparation and foresight. I wrote a line in my notebook. They stepped into the web. Now they see the threads they cannot untangle. The city outside was quiet. The streets shimmered in wet light. My apartment remained calm. Sentinel hummed, green and alive, silently affirming the control I held. Tomorrow, Titan would realize that their overreach had played directly into my hands. The morning arrived with a gray sky and a quiet tension. Titan's headquarters felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves anticipated the unraveling. Employees moved cautiously, glancing over shoulders, whispering about memos and press coverage. I walked past them with the calm of someone who had prepared for every possible outcome, notebook in hand, mind tracking each subtle reaction. I reached my desk, powered on my personal laptop, and confirmed the Sentinel dashboard. 17 green dots, all alive, all functional, every facility secure, every line of code intact. The kill switch remained untouched, ready if the final moment demanded it. By mid-morning, internal Titan communications showed signs of panic. Conflicting memos, emails to employees attempting to clarify ownership, directives to legal teams. Every misstep confirmed what I had anticipated. They were scrambling, moving faster than they could manage. I called Evelyn. "It's happening," I said. "I see it," she replied. "They're reacting exactly as we predicted. The public narrative is shifting. Clients are asking questions. Employees are uncertain. Step 1 is in motion." I nodded. Control was about to shift decisively. By noon, the first wave of our counterattack unfolded. Letters to clients went out, press releases issued, and legal notices distributed, each message precise, timed, and calculated. Titan responded publicly, their statements scattered, inconsistent, and increasingly defensive. Analysts revised projections, and social media buzzed with speculation. I observed quietly, documenting every reaction. Their fear was subtle but growing. Employees whispered, hesitated, double-checked instructions. Their executives floundered under scrutiny. By mid-afternoon, I reviewed the Sentinel dashboard once more. The hidden layer remained secure. I considered activating the kill switch, but restraint was more powerful. Knowledge of its existence, the silent leverage, was enough. Every node blinked green, every system functioned perfectly. My control was absolute without taking direct action. Evelyn arrived later carrying a stack of updated legal filings. "Everything is ready for escalation," she said. "If they push further, we respond instantly." "I know," I replied. "Timing is critical. We act when they overreach. That moment is coming." We went through the plans, step by step, rehearsing every scenario, anticipating every Titan move. Emails, statements, media inquiries, everything accounted for. By nightfall, the framework for our decisive move was complete. The evening passed quietly, the city below shimmering in wet light. I sat at my desk, sipping coffee, reviewing client responses and media coverage. The storm was under control. Titan's attempts to dominate the narrative faltered as our prepared responses unfolded seamlessly. Employees' fear deepened. Analysts' speculation increased. Public opinion, carefully guided, shifted subtly in our favor. Every movement confirmed the precision of our planning. By late night, the green dots of Sentinel pulsed in perfect rhythm, every system secure. The kill switch remained untouched, a silent threat. The control we held was now evident. Titan's overreach had been anticipated, their every step mapped, every potential consequence mitigated. I opened my notebook and wrote a line. "The final move is not a strike, it is the unveiling. They cannot undo what they cannot control." I looked out the window at the quiet streets, the reflection of neon signs flickering on the wet pavement. Milestech Innovations stood poised. Sentinel hummed silently, a testament to years of preparation, to foresight, to calculated patience. By dawn, Titan would realize that their attempts to seize control had backfired completely. Their systems, their employees, their reputation, all under subtle but undeniable pressure. And all the while, I had done nothing yet. Control was not action, it was the power to act when it mattered most. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the calm of preparation settle over me. Sleep was brief, filled with green lights and blinking nodes, reminders of the control I had cultivated. Tomorrow, the world would see the outcome of the final move, but only I would understand the depth of what had been orchestrated. The morning after the final confrontation felt surreal. I arrived at the office early, the halls quieter than usual. Titan's employees moved cautiously, whispers drifting along the corridors. They glanced toward me, their eyes full of uncertainty. Some recognized that the rules had changed, but none fully understood how much. I settled at my desk, opened my personal laptop, and checked the Sentinel dashboard. 17 green dots glowed steadily, every facility operational, every system intact. The kill switch remained untouched, but its presence had ensured that Titan could not act recklessly. Control had been maintained not by force, but by foresight. By mid-morning, news outlets were reporting on Titan's missteps. Headlines highlighted the legal battle, the IP dispute, and Milestech Innovations' decisive counteraction. Analysts debated Titan's credibility, noting internal conflicts and operational vulnerabilities exposed during the media storm. I read each article carefully, noting discrepancies, exaggerations, and public sentiment. Everything was accounted for, everything anticipated. Every misstep by Titan played exactly as planned. Evelyn arrived mid-afternoon. She carried a stack of legal documents and client correspondence. We reviewed each item meticulously. "They're trying to contain the narrative," she said. "Damage control memos, internal emails, revised statements, but they're reacting to our actions. They have no initiative." "Good," I replied. "That was always the plan. Control the narrative and the rest follows." She nodded. "Francesca, the clients are responding favorably. Most are standing by Milestech. Some have even questioned Titan's claims publicly. It's a landslide of perception." I leaned back, sipping coffee. Years of preparation, sleepless nights, and careful planning had culminated in this. The reality of control was tangible, and yet it remained delicate. Titan attempted a series of legal maneuvers: notices, threats, attempted injunctions. Each was met instantly by our prepared responses. Letters sent, press releases distributed, client communications clarified. Every move was anticipated, every consequence mitigated. The legal team was executing like clockwork, guided by the framework Evelyn and I had built over weeks. I monitored the Sentinel nodes again, each blink green, every system operational. Employees at Titan were unaware of the depth of the leverage we held. I did not activate the kill switch. I didn't need to. Knowledge of its existence was enough to keep them in check. By evening, Titan had begun to crumble under the combined pressure of public scrutiny, legal exposure, and operational vulnerability. Internal emails revealed hesitation and fear among executives. Employees were unsure whom to trust. Analysts predicted significant corporate fallout. Public perception had shifted decisively in favor of Milestech. I made a note in my notebook: "Control is quiet, but its effects are loud." Evelyn reviewed our next steps. "We maintain pressure until they concede. Timing remains critical. One false move from them and we could escalate further." "I understand," I said, "but the narrative is already ours. Everything else is secondary." That night, I returned to my apartment. The city lights reflected on wet streets, neon and headlights shimmering like signals in a dark sea. I sat at my desk, reviewing media coverage, client responses, and internal communications. Milestech's position was secure. Sentinel remained firmly under our control. Titan's reputation had taken a substantial hit. I wrote in my notebook: "They underestimated preparation. They overreached. They learned the cost." Sleep came slowly, shallow but untroubled. Dreams were filled with green nodes, blinking in rhythm with my heartbeat, each dot a reminder of control, of leverage, and of patience rewarded. The next morning, clients reached out with questions, seeking clarification. I responded calmly, reinforcing ownership and licensing agreements. Analysts called, requesting interviews. Press outlets followed up. Every interaction executed precisely as rehearsed. Titan continued to scramble, issuing conflicting statements, internal memos, and damage control emails. Employees whispered, uncertainty rippled through their ranks. The company's public image was deteriorating, and yet, through it all, Milestech Innovations and I remained composed, prepared, untouchable. By mid-afternoon, the first resignations began to surface quietly within Titan. Middle managers, unsure of their standing, began to consider opportunities elsewhere. The seeds of internal instability were already planted. I observed quietly, taking notes, documenting each ripple. Every reaction confirmed the meticulous planning that had brought us to this moment. By late evening, the pressure on Titan had reached a critical point. Executives were convening emergency meetings, drafting revised statements, and attempting to regain control over both narrative and operations. Every misstep was documented, every weakness noted. I reviewed the Sentinel dashboard one last time. The kill switch remained untouched, every node operational, every facility secure. Control had been asserted, yet not exercised directly. The power was in preparation, in foresight, in knowing that the final move had been anticipated and neutralized before any action was necessary. I wrote in my notebook, ownership is not possession alone. It is preparation, execution, and timing. Titan has learned that the hard way. I leaned back, letting the quiet settle around me. The city below shimmered in the night. Sentinel hummed softly, a constant reminder that every system, every decision, every moment had been anticipated. Milestech Innovations had won not through force, but through patience, planning, and precision. The next morning, the city felt unusually quiet. I walked through the office halls with a sense of calm authority, my notebook tucked under my arm. Titan employees whispered in corners, eyes darting toward me before quickly looking away. They had learned, at least instinctively, that the rules had changed and that I had set the pace. I sat at my desk, powered on my personal laptop, and checked the Sentinel dashboard. 17 green dots glowed steadily, each representing a facility under my control. Systems were operational, secure, and untouchable. The kill switch remained untouched, but its presence alone kept Titan restrained. Control was mine, quiet but undeniable. By mid-morning, the first acknowledgments from clients began to arrive. Emails expressed support, requests for confirmation, and gratitude for clarity. Many had observed the media coverage and were reassured by the evidence we had prepared. Milestech Innovations' reputation had strengthened in the eyes of those who mattered. I responded carefully, professionally, and decisively. Every word reinforced ownership, control, and trust. Every message sent strategically, each sentence calculated to maintain confidence in Sentinel and our company. Titan was in disarray. Internal memos circulated with conflicting statements. Executives scrambled to mitigate fallout. Employees were uncertain, fearful of decisions they were suddenly unsure of. Public perception had shifted decisively. Analysts published reports highlighting weaknesses and miscalculations. Social media buzzed with discussions of the legal battle, the IP claims, and the engineer who had outmaneuvered a corporate giant. I observed quietly, documenting every response. Every misstep from Titan confirmed the accuracy of our predictions and the thoroughness of our planning. Evelyn arrived later that afternoon with an updated batch of documents. We reviewed them meticulously: client letters, press inquiries, legal filings, and internal communications. "They're attempting damage control," she said. "They're trying to regain the narrative, but it's too late. They've lost momentum." "Good," I said. "That was always the plan. Once the public narrative favors us, everything else falls into place." She nodded. "Francesca, your preparation has ensured that even if they escalate further, we can respond immediately. You hold the advantage completely." I smiled faintly. Control is quiet, but its effects are loud. By late evening, Titan's response grew frantic. Conflicting memos, panicked emails, and hastily drafted press releases created confusion internally and externally. Analysts noted inconsistencies. Employees whispered among themselves, uncertain who to trust or what decisions were authoritative. The company's cohesion began to falter. I reviewed each development calmly. Every ripple in their organization, every misstep, every sign of panic confirmed that my meticulous planning had succeeded. Milestech Innovations' position remained secure. Sentinel was untouched, operational, and firmly under my ownership. As night fell, I sat at my desk and reviewed the Sentinel dashboard one final time. The green dots pulsed steadily. Each facility was running smoothly. The kill switch remained in reserve, untouched, a silent symbol of leverage that ensured Titan could not escalate recklessly. I wrote in my notebook, years of preparation, nights of work, every detail accounted for. Control achieved without a strike. Ownership asserted without confrontation. The city outside shimmered with neon lights reflecting on rain-slick streets. The hum of Sentinel filled the quiet apartment, a constant, reassuring presence. Milestech Innovations had emerged victorious, not through brute force, but through foresight, preparation, and precision. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. My eyes traveled over the notebooks, the stacks of legal documents, the printed logs. Each one told a story of meticulous planning and execution. Each one represented years of effort, insight, and discipline. The battle was over, but the lesson remained clear. Control is not seized in a moment of reaction. It is built slowly, anticipated meticulously, and exercised strategically. By dawn, Titan had begun to concede. Executives resigned quietly, internal communications admitted errors, and public statements softened. The company faced scrutiny from clients, analysts, and media alike. Meanwhile, Milestech Innovations' credibility and trust had been solidified. I took a final glance at the Sentinel dashboard. Green nodes, unwavering, every facility operational, every system under my command. I didn't activate the kill switch, nor would I need to. Knowledge of its existence was sufficient. I wrote the last line in my notebook. They learned what preparation truly means. They discovered that ownership is more than possession. It is foresight, precision, and timing, and it belongs to me. I closed my laptop, powered down the lights, and looked out the window at the quiet city below. The rain reflected the neon glow, shimmering like a field of possibilities. Milestech Innovations had emerged from the storm unscathed, stronger than ever. Sentinel remained firmly under my control, a testament to years of dedication and meticulous planning. I sat back, listening to the hum of the system. Calm, steady, and unwavering. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to relax. The battle was won, the aftermath secured, and the world had witnessed the final move, though few understood its depth. Tomorrow, I would begin again. New challenges, new systems, new victories. But for now, I sat in quiet triumph, knowing that preparation, patience, and precision had carried the day.